Hello, my name is Tiffany Kutler, and today I'm going to be presenting my paper on leading a law enforcement agency. I chose to do a paper on how to lead a local sheriff's office. The sheriff's office I chose was founded in 1887. It has over 1,000 sworn officials. And a little under 500 non-sworn officials, support workers. The agency is made up of 6 different sub-units, which include the Patrol Bureau, Civil Operations Bureau, Criminal Investigations Bureau, Special Operations Bureau, Corrections Bureau, and Legal Services Bureau. Each division is appointed a commander of operations, and these individuals are chosen based on performance and time served with the agency. The sheriff himself, he's voted, he's elected. This agency has jurisdiction over about 600,000 residents in the area, and they police 5 cities. Boundaries of the nonprofit and private sectors. The main difference between nonprofit and private sectors, or nonprofit and public sectors, is money. Who owns the money, who determines how the money is spent, and where the funds come from. The private sector could be defined as those entities of the economy that are owned by the private sector. Public organizations, such as the Sheriff's Department, are controlled by the public. Citizens in the community elect the sheriff based on vote, and the organization is funded by state and government funds. Privately owned organizations, they focus more on gain. Their profits are based on their performance, as opposed to this department, the sheriff's office, who does not profit based on performance. They do not get more funds based on the amount of rest. They focus more on impacting others just because it's the right thing to do, whereas opposed to private organizations must meet quotas, and they're more product-based. The mission of this department. Well, law enforcement agencies are in place to reduce crime in their area. They want to protect the public and the property of the public. The mission of this department is to safeguard the lives and property, respectfully enforce the laws of the land, and work cooperatively to lessen the impact of crime on the lives of residents and visitors to this county. Basically, we want to work together with members of the community to uphold this mission and to create a better way of life and a safer environment for everybody that's in the area. We hope to do that by creating more street patrol officers to aggressively monitor the activity in the community, hopefully by making our presence known in the area. Residents will feel safer and criminals will be deterred from committing additional crime. The structure of this agency is made up similar to the United States government. The sheriff serves as the leader of all employees, sworn and non-sworn, of this department, basically like the President of the United States does. He's the elected chief, just like the President would be. And there's several branches underneath the sheriff, which the individuals in the branches underneath the sheriff sort of work as liaisons to the sheriff. They help him make decisions. and they help him maintain order within the organization. They oversee daily operations of the jail, as well as street patrol officers. They're required to meet deadlines and develop strategic operations plans, and they serve as leaders for their fellow officers. Underneath the sheriff, we have colonels, majors, captains, lieutenants, sergeants, corporals, privates, and support workers, and this is the chain of command. These individuals not only work on the streets of this community, they also work within the jails, within the courthouses, within the schools. Each unit, this department also has several different subunits, as we mentioned earlier. Each unit is designated a commander who's responsible for leading his or her team. The commander establishes goals for the unit and delegates job duties to the deputies that they're leading. Yearly objectives are created by the team leader, and it is the leader's responsibility to hold deputies accountable for their actions. Of the 6 subunits that we mentioned earlier, the Patrol Bureau is responsible for ensuring deputies monitor the streets of the community. They make their presence known in the community in an effort to deter crime. The Civilian Operations Bureau heads the funding of this agency. It's responsible for community relations and ensuring a strong communication line between deputies and residents. The Criminal Investigations Bureau is responsible for investigating major crimes in the area. They basically work side by side with the prosecutors to make sure that there is enough evidence to keep felony offenders incarcerated. Our 4th subunit is the Special Operations Bureau. They're required to prepare for emergency situations. Tactical teams are developed underneath this bureau and trained to prepare for extreme situations, such as hostages or biohazards. The Corrections Bureau works inside the jails. These officers are required to maintain the safety and security of all inmates in custody. Corrections officers serve as leaders. They monitor and coordinate all movement within the facility, and inmates depend on these officers to maintain a firm, fair, and consistent approach to implementing the facility policy and procedures daily. That's probably one of the most difficult jobs in this department. Moving on to organizational goals. The goals of this department: to create order within the community, to protect and serve the public, residents of the community, as well as their property, to reduce crime, create awareness in the community about crime, what's going on, what to look for, the dangers, warning signs. We hope to alter the negative view of officers. Residents often don't look at officers as a positive force in the community, and we hope to change that. We want to create efficient fiscal management and emergency preparedness. By monitoring the progress of this department's goals, we can ensure that the safety of the community, and we can decrease criminal activity in our area, which is typically the goal of all law enforcement agencies: create safety and decrease crime. Human resources. The Human Resources Department is responsible for much more than just hiring new employees. They have to not only do the hiring, but do the interviewing, background checks, deal with grievances from current employees, make sure that they stay up to date with the federal law so they're not violating any laws. They are required to deal with discrimination allegations, promotions, all federal guidelines must be followed by the Human Resources Department. All sworn officers are required to complete a polygraph administered by a professional, as well as a psychological evaluation before they are hired. Current employees are required to follow policy and procedure when submitting any complaint of discrimination. Moving on to risk assessment. Okay. The purpose of a risk assessment is to identify potential hazards which may develop within this agency. It also identifies who may be at risk for coming in contact with these hazards. All organizations, it doesn't matter if it's a law enforcement agency, fire department, or private organization, every organization has a certain level of risk involved. And this agency will identify hazards. Harm to officers is definitely going to be the most obvious hazard. The mere description of an officer's job duties is dangerous. Just being an officer, you are at risk at harm every day, just coming to work. As a leader, it's important to be able to adapt quickly to unforeseen changes. In order to develop adequate risk assessment for this agency, it's important to identify the risk. So the first identifiable risk, of course, is harm to the officers, as we stated earlier. And this risk is extremely high. Another identifiable risk is major disturbances, like we discussed earlier. The officers of this department are not just on the streets responding to calls, they're also working in the jails every day with offenders that are being detained. So jail riots are definitely a potential risk working in this field. Biohazards, hostage situations, another potential risk. Diversity in the workplace is inevitable. Diversity can be positive, but as we know, it can also be negative because it runs the risk of discrimination allegations or negative publicity for the department. So it is the department's responsibility to not only identify these risks, but create a form of action in order to handle these risks adequately as they develop. Leadership and motivation. Per the text, motivation refers to the forces, either internal or external, to a person that arouse enthusiasm and persistence to pursue a certain course of action. That being said, motivation and leadership skills in this department are extremely important. As a leader, we will be using two types of rewards: intrinsic, which is personal satisfaction,